Imagine taking the religious claustrophobia of a classic possession yarn and dropping it directly into the rigid, pristine world of a Mormon household. This is the pitch for Diabolic, the latest from director Daniel J. Phillips. It's a film that wants to be The Exorcist by way of maybe Hitchcock's Psycho, and unfortunately it spends far too much time checking its own reflection in the mirror before it finally decides to show its teeth. I wanted to love this because the ingredients of a high-concept cult classic are all present on the surface. There's just not too much meat on that bone. Visually, Diabolic is pretty good looking for an independent genre of filmmaking. It doesn't look cheap, it doesn't have that muddy digital straight-to-streaming sheen that plagues so many modern horror releases on VOD. The cinematography is pretty crisp, the lighting is deliberate, and there is a tangible, heavy atmosphere that suggests a much better movie is about to happen at any second. It's glossy, it's professional, and it sets the mood of dread that the script, frankly, struggles to maintain. We're going to look at whether this stylish exercise in religious trauma is worth your admission price, or if it's just a collection of effective scares trapped in a narrative that can't quite get out of its own way. The story follows Elise, played by Elizabeth Cullen, a woman whose life has been defined by a desperate search for a miracle. She's struggling with a debilitating condition, one that medicine hasn't been able to touch, leading her back to the fundamentalist roots of her upbringing. She isn't just looking for a doctor, she's looking for a divine intervention. Enter the miracle cure. Elise finds herself under the care of a group that promises healing through spiritual purging. But the stakes shift instantly from medical recovery to a fight for her soul. The conflict centers on a vengeful spirit, a cursed witch, who isn't looking to help Elise, but to use her as a fresh architectural blueprint for her own return to the physical world. Alongside Elise, we have Adam, played by John Kim, and Clara, played by Luca Asta Sardellis, who round out a small, intimate cast that feels isolated within this religious bubble. The tension is built on the idea that Elise's body is no longer her own. It is a prize to be claimed. It's a classic vessel narrative, but by centering it within the specific, rarely explored in horror context of the Mormon faith, the film creates a unique friction. You have the inherent politeness and structure of the religion clashing with the chaotic, ancient filth of the entity trying to get in. The setup is strong, but as we move into the meat of the experience, the cracks in the foundation start to show. Diabolic doesn't quite give us the grime, but it gives us the atmosphere. Daniel J. Phillips has an incredible eye for composition. There are shots in the first two acts, specifically the way shadows play off the minimalist, almost sterile Mormon iconography, that feel genuinely oppressive in a way. The cinematography is pretty good for such a low-budget, straight-to-video movie. It has a heavy clinical weight to it that reminds me of kind of early Cronenberg, maybe. And I think the sound design is actually really good as well. It uses silence as a weapon in some scenes. There's a specific recurring image involving the witch spirit. The possession scenes are really well done, actually. Some really effective horror imagery. When the movie decides to be scary, it's actually remarkably efficient at it. But looking past that, it's almost like there's a gift inside, but it's a little hollow. The dialogue is where the wheels are kind of wobbly. There are moments where the characters feel less like human beings and more like mouthpieces for the plot. Elizabeth Cullen does a lot of the heavy lifting as Elise, and her physical performance during the infestation scenes are really visceral. But the script lets her down with some iffy wooden exchanges with the other characters. John Kim and Luca Asta Sardellis are fine, I guess, but they feel like they're waiting for the movie to tell them what to do next rather than driving the action themselves. The pacing is the real villain here. Diabolic suffers from a severe case of backstory bloat. We have to spend an inordinate amount of time on sidetracks and secondary characters that ultimately feel like filler. It's frustrating because every time the movie starts to build a real head of steam, it pulls over to the side of the road to explain something we didn't already need to know. like it's a bunch of red herrings. It drags its feet when it should be sprinting. Then there is the character logic, or the lack thereof. There is one glaring character shift in the second act that feels completely unearned. One minute the character is a pillar of support, and then the next they've undergone a personality transplant to move the plot to the next location. It's not subtle, and in a movie that relies so heavily on vibes and psychological tension, these blunt, forced writing choices really pull you out of the experience. Despite the clunky dialogue and the pacing issues that make the middle hour feel like a marathon, the third act is a complete different beast. It's as if the production saved 80% of the budget for the final 20 minutes. Once the horror fully takes over the Galway setting, the movie transforms into a sick, high-octane nightmare that I actually really enjoyed. But there is some wild stuff that happens in the third act I cannot touch here. This is a spoiler-free review. But the twists are generally surprising, and the way the witch lore integrates with the religious themes leads to an ending that is far more daring than the rest of the movie suggests. So make sure to check out my ending explained for this movie. So is Diabolic worth the watch? If you're a horror completionist who lives for the vibes, cinematography, and a few high quality scares, you'll find enough here to justify a rental. It's a unique entry into the genre simply for its specific religious lens. However, if you demand a tight script, logical character arcs, and a story that doesn't foot drag through its runtime, this is gonna be a tough sit. It's a movie that's got a really good ending trapped inside a mediocre body. There isn't enough meat on these bones to make it a modern classic, and the Mormonism meets Exorcist pitch is a bit of a stretch when the actual execution feels more like a very expensive pilot for a prestige horror series that hasn't quite found its voice yet. So I'm giving Diabolic a 2 out of 5. It's pretty to look at, and the ending almost saves it, but almost doesn't quite get your recommendation. But did you see Diabolic? What did you think of it? Let me know down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and consider subscribing. If you want to support the channel a little further, join our YouTube membership for only 99 cents. If you want to see me deep dive into the ending of this movie, click on the ending explained by my head, and I'll see you next time.